Hello and welcome to another video from the Regional Print Centre. Today we're making a print using the drypoint technique, and we're going to print this by hand without using a press. So here we go. This is the image that we're working with today. It's a tracing from a drawing that I've done, which the drawing I've done on the computer using software which is called Inkscape, and using a graphics tablet, a drawing tablet. So I've composed that and I've printed it off, and I've put the drawing together and made a tracing from it, and I'm going to work from this tracing onto the drypoint plate. So next I'll show you the drypoint plate. Move that out of the way. This is drypoint plastic and it comes in various sizes. This is, I think it's 30 by 40 centimeters, maybe a little bit more. Can't remember exactly, but it's a good size. Standard size, it's fine. It comes with a protective sheet on both sides, so that needs to be removed before we start printing. So we do that. One is got a pearly white finish to it, which is quite easy to remove. You can see that quite easily. There is also another one on the other side, which is a clear film. And it's important that you remove that too, because if you start drawing into the plastic, you'll find, without taking this off, you'll find that you've not got much of an image on the plastic when you come to print. So as you can see with this, it's clear, which is really useful if you're working from a tracing or a drawing, because you can just put it underneath. Stating the obvious, really, you can just put it underneath and work on that. You've got your basis of the drawing, and then you can start working in with etching needles, which is the next stage. So I'm going to fasten this down so it's not going to move around as I'm drawing on it, and then I'll start engraving into it. I do tend to work on a black background, a black piece of paper, because quite often when you're drawing into this plate with the etching needles, it becomes quite difficult to see what you're doing, and having the black background sort of with good lighting does tend to throw out the lines that you've made, which can be quite useful. Okay, be back in a minute and we'll get started. Okay, I've changed the tripod around, so I hope you can get a better viewing of what I'm doing here. I'm going to fasten the drypoint plastic to the tracing using some masking tape. If I can, I always tend to use a low-tack masking tape, which I quite like, really, because it leaves a less of a deposit on areas that you're working with. And if you're sticking it to paper as well, quite often the standard masking tape takes the surface of the paper away. With this, does tend not to do that. So just 4 little pieces. 1, 2, 3, and 4. So I'm ready to go now. So now I can move this around with no fear of the tracing moving from the plate. For etching needles, I just use two very basic ones. The really basic etching needle, which is quite a good point. It's not quite as sharp as some, so I have one which is sharp and have one which is very sharp, and I sort of, depending on the line I want, I will choose which one I want to use. One of the differences between them is when you're drawing on the dry point plate, you can find that the sharper one gouges deeper into the plastic, so it creates more of a sort of furrow. So let me just get a piece of paper and draw what I'm talking about. So you have this is your piece of the surface of your dry point plastic. Your needle will go into this, but what it will do is remove the plastic from this area here, and it will create a sort of ploughed furrow here, and that will hold a lot more ink than a less deep line. The furrow, because it is plastic, it will sort of diminish over with the pressure of the printing, but you will still get a decent number of prints from this process. So put that out of the way, pen away. This is very sort of angular print image that I'm working with, so I'm going to use a set square as a guide. So let's get started. Okay, so I've started drawing onto this with the etching needle, and I'm really just transferring the tracing onto the dry point plastic, and then I'll start working in with more shading and a bit more tone, depth, etc., etc. I've started in this corner here. Don't know whether you can see it, and I'm just going over the lines using this set square, like I say. Sometimes you can find with a set square over plastic like this, when you're using it, there's a bit of movement there. It slips. You don't get a straight edge. So I combat that by just putting small pieces of masking tape on the other side of the either the ruler or the set square that I'm using, and it just does help that little bit of grip with it. So as you can see, I'm just working away, transferring these lines onto it. And you probably can't see what I'm doing here, so let me just take, if I just remove this from here, hopefully you'll see the difference with the black background on it. Probably not, but I'm working in this area here. I thought I'd just point out and show you this little tip, which is quite handy for just so you can see the lines a little bit better. Just taking a little bit of French chalk and rubbing it into the etching lines that you've made. French chalk or whiting, that'll do it, and it will just help you see what you've done so far. I hope that's coming out. I'm not sure. But let me just show you in the background again. So if I fold that over, then you get a better idea of what I'm working on. And that's really useful because it can be difficult when you've got a complex drawing on and etching, a complex drawing, and you're engraving into the plastic. It's not always that easy to see where you're up to. So, one worth remembering. I've now finished transferring the tracing onto the dry point, just using the outline that's on the tracing paper. So I'm going to remove the tracing paper now. You probably can't see, I'm just taking the little tabs out here that's holding it in place. I've got the black paper behind so I can see what it looks like and see if there's any areas that I've missed. So I'm just removing these pieces of masking tape. Now we'll take the tracing away and we'll see what we've got. And you can see there's half of the plate doesn't have the French chalk, the whiting in it, over it. But you can see the other half, how it helps to see what you're working with. So I'm just going to do the other part of the plate. You don't need a lot on it. It'll just putting it on with my finger and just rubbing it into the marks I've made. So I've got the image of the print on the dry point plastic now, and what I'm going to do now is start working into it, introducing some shading, give it a bit more depth, and give it more of a layer quality that it has at the moment. It's quite flat at the moment and I want it to look a little bit more dimensional. So just finish applying this. I don't quite know how I'm going to achieve that depth in the image yet, but it's something I'm going to have to see. There's a line that I've missed off, which I wouldn't really have picked up on unless I was putting this chalk onto it. Sometimes with a smaller plate you can get away with it, but a larger plate like this one, there's another line there I can see that's missing, another bar. So just give it a tap. And that's what's there. So a couple of things missing which I'll need to rectify, and then I'm going to start drawing into it, shading, and I'll come back when I've decided exactly what I'm doing, and we'll take it from there. Well, I'm continuing to work on this plate, adding a few more lines, which again you can't really see until I put a bit of French chalk on it, and hopefully it will come into view then. It's just a very simple line that's been added to it to emphasize the layers above and below, sort of thing, really. I think that should give you an idea of what it's looking like at the moment. with that. And it's really just a matter of using a drypoint needle and my set square. Sorry, I had to dash downstairs to answer the door then. Yes, so I'm going to go ahead, do the rest of that, and then I'm going to work on the background, these areas around here. And I'm thinking that I'm going to work on those with a Dremel tool, which I've never used before, but I've had one for a while and never really got to grips with it. But I think it could make some interesting lines, which fits in with the rest of the work that I've been doing. So hopefully we'll see. And that's it for now. Thank you. So I've completed those lines now, and I think it's helped the layering, the bands that are going under and the ones that are going over. I think it's helped to emphasize that element in the work, and I'm really happy with that. I think that's going to come out really interesting in the print. There is a couple of marks on here which I've just got because I've just noticed because I've been carting this around different places. There's one right here, which is just a scratch. There's one there, and then there's another one here. And they're just marks, and because of the nature of the material, it easily picks up marks. But that's a quality that I like with this material. Quite often with this, I'll just put it on the floor and scuff it up a bit, and it just gives a bit of character to the print. It's excellent. So I'm not worried about anything like that. So the next thing I'm going to do is take this, which is a Dremel, and it has a ball-shaped engraving bit in it, which I'm going to work in the background with. Let me just show you on a scrap piece. So here I've got a scrap piece, and I've just got to take the pearl coloured film off the back so you can see what I'm doing. I have tried a little on here already, but it's a variable speed one. They do now do a cordless one. You can also get a long lead which goes to a finer what's the word I'm looking for, whole pen sort of type element. There's various different ones, but this is the one. This is my own, and this is one that I've got. So the noises come on a bit, and I hope you can still hear me, but I'm just going to take this and just really I just want some really loose drawn lines on the surface of this in the background, just to see how it comes out. So I'll just shake that off. It does create quite a texture to it. With it being plastic, it doesn't just wipe away, but just had a little bit of French chalk. Then you can see the marks that it's making. It's almost like a scribble, doodling, and I quite like that. So let me see if we can zoom in a little bit. So there you can see I'm going to put that in the background behind the line shapes that I've got. on the plate now. Let's see how that comes out. So as you can see, I'm starting using the Dremel tool on the plate, and I'm trying not to put too much pressure on so that it doesn't create too much of a deep gouge, which will overshadow the other lines in the print. But we'll try it and we'll see how we get on with it. It's not the easiest tool to use because it's attached, it's got a cord to it. It's a weight. And you know, if you're used to holding a sort of pencil, pen, brush type implement, when you've got something as chunky as this, it's a bit more difficult. That's why that extension with the hose, which goes down to a finer sort of pen adapter, works better. But I'll keep going, keep doing a bit more. It's quite a weight, that, and it does take a bit of strain on your hand holding it after a while. It's probably taken me 20 minutes to do that, what I've just done on here. Creates a lot of particles off it. And it's not that easy to control because it's a spinning... what's the word I'm looking for? It's a spinning stylus, So as you touch it onto the plate, it's quite easy for it just to shoot off in a direction. But having said that, because you can't control it that easily, it does make some interesting marks. And it's going to be really interesting to see how it prints. And that's going to be the next part of the video. And I think I will probably need to put that into a separate film. So, there's a bit I missed. There's always one, isn't there? Okay, I'm going to go and do these little bits that I've missed. I found another one. And then we'll return with part 2.